Welcome to the InPowered Life podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Anniston, and this is InPowered Life. Welcome to the InPowered Life podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. You're joined by Anniston Riekstins, and today we have a very thought-provoking episode for you. I wanted to start right up front by cautioning you that today's going to be an episode that's going to give you a moment of pause, and then you have an opportunity to reflect on what it is that we're saying, and then ask yourself, how does what it is that we're saying ring true for you? Where does this resonate deep within you? And if you can get to a place where you start to ask really important questions about what is happening in your life, how your life is potentially serving and or supporting you, you know, we always like to talk about in the Empowered Life podcast, ask better questions, you're going to get better answers. And this episode is heavily focused in on how can you create some of the pause so that you can create time to reflect on what is happening in life, because life is always giving you feedback based on where you are, what it is you're doing, and where it is that you're going.
You know, I love the line, I didn't make it up, but that life isn't about perfection. It's about correct perception. And that at any moment, whatever's happening in your life, whatever's going on in your life, whatever that is, whether it be challenging or whether it be a really happy moment, if you're able to make sure that you're looking at it through the right lens, that will give you the information and the gold in the situation, if you will, that life can become like heaven on earth. Like life, even through the challenges, you feel supported, you feel loved, and you feel like there's a purpose and there's meaning to everything that's happening around you. And the reason why we wanted to bring this topic to the InPowered Life podcast is because this has been a very real, relevant topic and conversation for Rudi and I over the last couple of weeks. And I'll let him dig into the details of specifically what his experience of this journey was. But essentially, it was a health issue. And, you know, life teaches us in many different ways. Sometimes it's through our relationships. Sometimes it's through our finances. Sometimes it's through our job. But oftentimes, and one that I know many of us can relate to, it becomes our health. And when something happens with your health, everything stops. It can bring you to your knees. And I say that metaphorically as well, because oftentimes it's the thing that will, for many people, bring them to their greatest levels of transformation. And so we wanted to share with you what's been going on in our world the last couple of weeks, the gold and the amazing blessings that have come from it, being on the other side of it now, in hopes that you can relate to this and that the next time something comes up for you, you'll be able to perceive it a little bit differently.
So we want to title this, if you will, what is your illness trying to tell you?
Teach you.
And I would say the better phrase, yes. And so if you look at all of life, you're constantly getting feedback. And I started today's episode very intentionally saying we're constantly getting taptic feedback, but we don't always listen to that feedback. And when we don't listen to the feedback, we push the body into a state of disrepair or illness or disease. And then we're forced to create that momentary pause. And not everybody takes the time to reflect in that pause. And so what I want to talk about today is not so much illness, not so much disease, not so much the setback of the body breaking down, but more about the information that is available in that, because we're receiving this information and the body is giving you information, but it's also teaching you in the same process. But you have to create the space to be able to listen. And so I want to share with you very candidly, as we keep nothing back on the InPowered Life podcast, I am an incredibly healthy individual, and so is Anniston. And we do everything biohacking. We work out, we cold plunge, sauna, we eat right. I mean, everything about how we live our lives, no alcohol. I mean, I even cut out coffee, just all the things to purify my body and to purify my mind. And so when I get to a state where my body says, hey, we need to pull up the handbrake, something's wrong, then for me, it's an extra surprise because I'm like, how? How am I someone who is getting sick? Or how am I somebody who's debilitated in this time or in this moment? And for me, it was a gradual process. I woke up one day and I started feeling a little feverish and wasn't sure what was going on. And we had a call with the doctor and they get prescribed this medication. And 7 or 8 days later, I started to feel a little bit better, but I wasn't 100% myself. And that lasted for about a week. And then all of a sudden, I got hit like a 16-wheel mag truck came up behind me and just pummeled me. And I landed up in hospital. I share this because that entire process was a 3-week period of my body screaming at me, telling me it's time to slow down. And I refused to listen. I did all the things that we would normally do. I mean, I went to the doctor 3 different times. I went to the urgent care. I did all kinds of things in an effort to support me in maintaining my health and my well-being. But there was a massive alarm bell going off that I was avoiding, or at least pretending wasn't happening while I was trying to mitigate all the other things around me. And that ultimately landed me in the hospital. I was flying to Florida because I was going to be speaking at an event, a 3-day event where I was hosting the entire conference. With the exception of the opening 15-minute remarks and the closing 15-minute remarks, it was all going to be me. And so I had planned, prepared, curated days worth of content to be able to teach to this audience. An hour before I am meant to go on stage, I am feeling the weight of what is happening inside my body. I'm having hallucinations. My body is in an extremely high state of fever. I cannot eat. I cannot sleep. I'm hot. I'm cold. I'm hot. I'm cold. I get on a video call with my local doctor in North Carolina. Keep in mind, I'm in Florida, an hour from going on stage. And my doctor says, Rudi, I know that you have plans. I know that you are committed to impacting the people that you're going to be impacting today. But what I need you to do right now is go to the emergency room. He's like, not an urgent care. I need you to go to real hospital. What you have is life-threatening. And if you don't go to the hospital now, you could die. And in that moment, I still was trying to think of, how could I do today's sessions and then go to the hospital, because I didn't want to disappoint the room full of people that I was working with. How do you tell them an hour before, I'm sorry, you've got to come up with your own content. You've got to now replan your life. And so I was still trying to convince myself I could get this done. And I had promised Anniston that I would call her when I was finished with the doctor. And so I did. And even on the phone with her, I was telling her, I think I can do this. I think I've got enough in the tank for me to just get through today. It's only so many hours, so many topics. And then I'm going to go to the doctor and they'll pump me full of something and I'll be able to carry on tomorrow. And I was trying to convince myself. And I heard her on the other end of that phone breaking down and tears in her eyes. You could hear it in her voice. And she said, I'm begging you, please don't mess with this. Like just go to the hospital, go to the emergency room. And hearing that in her voice was enough to break me, so that I made the phone call and said to the event coordinators, I'm not going to be able to make it. And they were gracious enough to rush me off to the hospital, stay with me in the emergency room while I was there, until obviously I was eventually admitted into the hospital. So now let's get to the pause, because I was in hospital for 2 days by myself before Anniston was able to get to me, because she obviously had to get my mom to fly down to look after my kids. It was like a whole reorganization of life to make her create the space to come and see me. Every single doctor and every single nurse that walked into my room, which was probably every 30 minutes, every 40 minutes, walked in and said, you know, the TV works, right? You can put the TV on. And then every now and again, they would turn the TV on and then I would turn it off the minute they left. because I didn't want to listen to the TV. I didn't want to watch the TV. I didn't want to listen to podcasts. Anniston was sending me podcast episodes to entertain me. I had 2 books, one of which is Anniston's upcoming book that I was so eager to get into. But at that time, I had nothing in me to listen to consume. And all I wanted to do was sit in my mind. And so for about 48 hours, by myself, having these fitful 15, 20-minute naps and then being awake throughout the night and all throughout the day I was awake, I just wanted to be present in my mind. And I wanted to ask my mind and I wanted to ask my body, how is this moment serving me? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I so sick? Why is somebody who is so healthy, why is their body right now in such disrepair? And that's what it felt like in that moment as I was trying to just recuperate and break through these fevers and have these hallucinations. And, when I got to the realization of what was happening with me, it actually brought so much emotion to the surface that I was in a constant state of just bursting into tears. One of the nurses walked into the room and she said to me, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong? You look like the saddest person in the world," as I just sat on my bed and I just had the weight of my world on my shoulders. And I didn't say a word to anybody. And when Anniston finally was able to get to the hospital, we spent probably a good day together before I said anything to her. And I'm going to tell you, I was weeping in and out. It didn't matter. It could be a text message from somebody saying, "Hey, I'm rooting for you." I would start crying. It could be a message from one of the companies that I support where they send about 150 messages of well wishes to me. And I would just burst into tears. There was just always this emotion right under the surface. And Anniston never pushed, never pried, never wanted to know what was going on in my head. And after about a day of spending some time with her in the hospital, I turned to her and I said, I had the most intense realization as to what's been going on in my body and what is my body trying to tell me and or teach me in this moment. And I feel like it was yelling at me. We weren't at teaching yet. We were at yelling to get attention. And I had the realization that I have this unwavering quest to create profound impact out in the world, whether I'm in front of one person or whether I'm in front of 20 people, whether it's my family or whether it's an entire auditorium or stadium full of individual souls. I am there to create the greatest, most profound impact that I possibly can. I pour everything I can into the people around me constantly. When I am sitting in a cold plunge, whether I'm eating broccoli, whether I'm skipping a cup of coffee, I do these things for the people that I get to impact later so that I'm prepared, so that I'm ready to create the profound impact that's coming. And what I realized in that moment was that I don't give that same amount of love, time, effort, energy to me. And that I don't love me as much as I love the people I pour into. When I mentioned a moment ago, I received a video message with around about 150, and I could be exaggerating very slightly, but around about 150 messages from people within an organization that I've been impacting for years. And they had all formed these messages of wanting to just say, "We love you, we're thinking of you, we're pouring into you." Almost every single person unsolicited said, "You pour into people more than anyone we know, and it's time you pour into you." And I heard that over and over and over, like it was gnawing at my soul. And in that moment, I really broke down into tears and I had that realization that I don't pour into me. I don't give me, even at the cost of my life. When the doctor said, "Rudi, this is life threatening. I need you to go to the emergency room right now." And in my head, I'm like, I can still do today. I can go at the end of today. I don't want to disappoint people today. And so I really want the audience to sit and listen to that. I want you, as you hear these words, to think about where in your life are you experiencing something, but you're not necessarily listening to what is the information. Are you always constantly pouring into people, but not pouring into yourself at the same level? I canceled my entire work week last week and I canceled my entire work week this week, even though I had 2 really big events that I was really excited for that came at tremendous income into the business. just to pour into me, because I learned the most profound lesson that if I don't have it within me, I have nothing to give. And I'm having to relearn what does that relationship look like, where it's not always just a yes to everybody else, that sometimes it's a yes to me.
Ooh, man, what a freaking week. Even just listening to you again rehash it, I get a little emotional. And I think, I had my own experience of this, as we do, right? And for anyone listening who has a partner or a best friend or someone that's really close to you that goes through something like this, that's really, from a health perspective, there's learning for everyone. And this is the perfection of the universe as it is, right? So on my side, I, for weeks, was sitting here watching him struggle and watching him do what he does, which is push through. Like it is something to admire, but it is also, I think in our day and age in this society, hearing him tell this story, it sounds pretty heroic, right? It sounds like, you'll do whatever it takes to keep your commitments, right? But when I think about the amount of people he was to be impacting this last week and this week, it's so marginal and so small compared to the millions upon millions upon millions of people that this man is meant to impact over the entirety of his life. And when you start really thinking about the fact that, we're given one vehicle. Imagine in high school, or the first car you were ever given, right? If you were told this is the only vehicle you will ever have your entire life, so you best change the oil. You best take care of it, right? Because, your journey stops when it does. And we believe that our souls continue on, but the journey in this lifetime, on this journey, stops when our bodies do. And I was seeing him continue to push, continue to show up, keep his obligations, be on his coaching calls, even though he was shivering with fever, couldn't eat. I was seeing him waste away, like he was losing weight so quickly. And I could just sense in his energy that something was wrong. And my alarm bells were just firing off. So as he's packing to go on this trip, and I'm saying, like, babe, like, don't go. Like, call the organizer, tell them you're sick. Like, this is going to require a lot of energy that you're going to be pouring into people, because he doesn't just show up half-assed. Like, he goes for it. And he just kept looking at me with these horribly sick eyes and saying, babe, I can't do that to them. Like, I've made a commitment. I've got to do this. And I don't think it had ever really occurred to him that maybe he wouldn't be able to do this. And so what I was dealing with was this fear. I had a lot of fear. I'm a fixer. So when someone in my life, especially someone as much as I love as Rudi, is not well, it takes up my entire being, like everything I think about, and I just want to fix it because I'm judging it as this is wrong. This can't be, this is not a good thing. This is whatever. Instead of being able to look at it, from a more spiritual perspective and zoom out and not be so emotionally attached and say, interesting that he's co-creating this in his life for a reason. And what is that reason? And what am I meant to learn from this? And dropping him off at the airport, I like burst into tears after he got out of the car. I just knew, I was like, this is a moment. So I was having my own energetic release and my own, learning. And I've learned so much through just being a witness and observing and being an active participant in this experience. And it's, I have to look back at my own health journey. And I will tell you that the greatest moments of transformation and quantum leaps forward, I would say, in my life have in the past come at the heels of getting over a chronic sickness. I've spoken about this on podcasts in the past where I actually dealt with the chronic UTIs for a long time. And it wasn't until I got to the part where I was like, I can't take another antibiotic. I can't go see another doctor. Whatever I'm doing is not working. And this is so disruptive to my life. And I was feeling so disempowered that one morning I just broke into tears on the phone with Rudi. And I just said, I've got to figure this out. And so I just decided I was going to sit in it. I was going to stop resisting the pain, resisting it, and instead start asking it questions like a person. Like, and it sounds a little crazy, but just saying, okay, infection, what am I not seeing? Like, what are you trying to tell me? And that sparked, just over the next 48 hours, a ton of memories coming up to the surface. It was almost like my soul was just waiting for me to ask the question. And then just a ton of things started coming up for me. I wound up working with my good friend Rebecca, who is a hypnotherapist, for a month or two. And she was able to really help me work through a lot of childhood trauma and things that I just hadn't even known was there, and that were linked. That was linked to some of these symptoms. And I will tell you, after going through that and healing, I haven't had an issue since. It's almost like the lesson was learned and I was able to move past that. And I actively choose to learn through joy instead of suffering. But I will tell you, sometimes when we don't pay attention to what's coming up and what our body's trying to tell us, that it will get worse before it gets better, just to get your attention.
I want to touch on something Anniston said that you may have missed, and that is whenever she would have any form of discomfort of any kind, she would medicate to make sure she didn't feel whatever her body was trying to tell her.
Did not want to feel bad. Did not want to feel any pain. I didn't want to, nothing, which I also didn't want to feel negative emotions. So there's no, pain and emotion, same.
Same. And so she would take a Tylenol or two the minute something came up, to the point where I would be like, do you really need that right now? And she'd be like, yes, I absolutely need that. I've got a headache now. I'm preempting a potential headache that's coming. And it was always this wanting to make sure that she never felt any of the discomfort. The difference in what she had just shared in that moment was she created the space to listen. So instead of medicating and immediately taking medication, and we're not advocating that you should or you shouldn't take medication. We're not doctors. I want to stress and caution, you should always seek the advice of your medical doctor or practitioner. But we're talking about, in conjunction with that, is creating space. So instead of her immediately going to Tylenol in that moment or going to Azo in that moment, it was going into her mind and saying, okay, so this is chronic. This keeps coming up. And why is this coming up? She still took medication. She still went and saw the doctor. She still got onto the protocols that were required to support her body to heal. But she stayed for 2 days, at least 2 days, in her mind, where she was just very present with her body. What are you trying to tell me? What do I need to learn? And she came to me and just shared that she had a memory of an experience with an ex-boyfriend that had surfaced that hadn't even thought of in years, and came to me and said, what's interesting is I created the space, and here came this memory, here came this shame, here came this judgment, here came all these emotions, and could it be related? And that was the tipping point to her deciding to go and seek somebody to help her. And Rebecca, did not come at a nominal fee. She was very expensive, very good at what she does, but she took her very much into the unconscious mind and supported her in healing. But none of that would have been possible if she didn't first create the space. Me lying in a hospital bed and choosing to spend time in my head, which was almost a week of just sitting and listening in my thoughts. What's going on? What is my body trying to tell me? Reconciling those thoughts, paying attention to the patterns of the past of how is it that I've shown up, how I'm so quick to pour into somebody else, but I won't give myself that same grace. Whereas if we really do think about the analogy of you get one car and you get to look after that car, any logical person who is experiencing 2 to 3 weeks of chronic pain, who is having, seizures or is experiencing hallucinations. And, to give you some context, I had a blood infection, and so it was, going throughout my entire body. My kidneys were struggling. Everything was just under tremendous strain. And it was very difficult to be in a state where you feel excited, motivated, want to jump up and down. I was still doing my meditations. I was still doing my workouts. I was still doing everything that I could to maintain my mind and my body, but my body just screamed louder and louder and louder until eventually I started to listen. And I don't wish that level of discomfort on any single person on the planet. And I don't think that we need to go to a state where we have that. But I've had a really busy year, and my body's been telling me to slow down for a really long time. And I wasn't listening. I didn't create the space. Whereas, Anniston will say, I don't think you need to take that event. You've got back-to-back events. It's 3 weeks in a row. We're not going to see you. Why don't you give that event up so that you'll be better prepared for more events as the year unfolds? And in my mind, I hear there are going to be 100 souls in that room. There's going to be 12 souls in that room. There's going to be people to create an impact. And so I will give up on what I need in an effort to give what other people need. And to have had this experience to realize I need to give me first. I should never have got on that plane. I should never have committed to that event knowing what I know now. At the time, hand to heart, I fully believed I was 100% capable of giving them an incredible experience, supporting them and having breakthroughs right up until that last hour before the event. But my story is just my story, and Anniston's story is just Anniston's story. This episode is not about our stories, it's about yours. And so we want to challenge you today to stop and ask yourself, what is your body trying to teach you right now? What is your body shouting and screaming at you for right now? Is it fatigue? Is it brain fog? Are you maybe having an illness and something's going wrong in your body? What are you not listening to? And that if you could just pause and create the space to ask yourself, what is the lesson in this? What could you take away from this? What is the learnings? What are you being taught right now before you get to a place where you are forced to listen, which is what happened with me, and create the space where you just get to learn the lesson. As Anniston so beautifully said a moment ago, you get to grow in peace, you get to grow in joy, you get to grow in harmony. It doesn't have to be hard. And so what is your body teaching you right now? And if you could, what could you take away from this valuable lesson?
I will tell you that I am so grateful for this experience. And that's true. And that's really coming from a deep place because, like you said, the lesson that you're taking away is so big. Like it was a really big aha moment for you when you were able to, because it wasn't just this one experience. I mean, you've spent a lifetime of overgiving, putting the weight of the world on your shoulders and breaking your own heart along the way. Because instead of you saying, you know what? I love everyone here and I want to impact them, but I also love me. And I'm worthy of rest. I'm worthy of feeling good. I'm worthy of bowing out, right? When something something comes up and it's unexpected, but it doesn't feel right for me, or I need to put my priorities elsewhere. And you're going to have a long career and lots of choices like this are going to come up for you. We were actually walking this morning and I said to him, I'm really glad this happened now because it's only going to get more busy for you. I fully believe as long as you're able to continue functioning as you are and knowing your purpose as you do and fulfilling it, that I believe it's only going to get more. And you will never forget this experience. I will never forget this experience. And it was such a great teacher for me too, because there are times when I don't listen or I try to push because I don't want to miss out or I don't want to disappoint people. But ultimately, we're only able to support other people to the degree that we've supported ourselves. We're only able to love other people to the degree that we've loved ourselves. So imagine how powerful you will be now, fully supporting yourself, showing up on that stage, and 100% of who you are and in your power. And then it'll just be bubbling out of you. And so, like Rudi said, I think this is a time, our hope is that you reflect on your own life and whether it be yours, whether it be you going through this with somebody else, and just know that our human bodies are unbelievably and perfectly made, and they have their own pharmacy in them. I mean, they really are, human bodies are meant to be in a state of well-being. but they are constantly communicating when we're out of alignment emotionally, when we're out of alignment spiritually, when we're out of alignment mentally. All of those areas impact our body. So the key is to be present, to not just sweep symptoms under the rug, because they won't just go away. And if they do come back, that's because you haven't learned the lesson. I believe Rudi healed so quickly because it was pretty soon after, we thought he was going to have to be in the hospital a lot longer than he was. And it was pretty soon after we had that conversation where he had that realization and actually vocalized it out loud and shared it with me and really had a lot of emotional release around it, that he started to improve rapidly. It was like from one day to the next, it was like night and day. And then the next day, even more, and the next day, even more. And he's healing beautifully. I believe it's because of the degree with which he was willing to learn the lesson. If he hadn't taken anything from this and he felt like a victim and he was mad at his body and mad at life for making him miss these events, which because he wasn't there, then clearly he wasn't meant to be there, then I believe that he would just have to have this experience over again. It would just look different. Or it would take a long time for him to heal, but his body has responded beautifully. And I will also say that the people that he was meant to be supporting, they had the experience they were meant to have. And the event he was meant to be supporting this week, they're having the experience they were meant to have. And there's a reason for that. We might never know why, but we have to trust that there's always a purpose there.
Anniston said something a moment ago, and I didn't intentionally not go there, but because she touched on it, I feel compelled to end today's episode with this. When I felt the tremendous emotion building up inside of my body, it was because I was suffering a broken heart. My chest was actually in pain, even though my ailments were not related to my chest or my lungs. I was struggling to take in a deep breath. And as I would breathe in, it would feel like I was pushing up against my lungs, and my heart genuinely felt like it was broken. And when I shared with Anniston that I'd had this realization that I pour into everybody around me. If anyone says, hey, will you do a training at 10 o'clock at night because we're on PST, I'm the first one there. I'm just constantly, it doesn't matter what I've got, I will fit it in and I will pour into the people around me. And I never say no. And in that moment, I realized that I had broken my own heart, because all this time I was pouring into people, but I wasn't pouring into me at the level that I didn't love me enough to say no, or I didn't love me enough to put down enough boundaries, or I didn't love me enough to say, hey, you need to go to the doctor. This is really serious. And that realization that everybody outside of me was more important than me genuinely broke my heart. And I don't know if anyone listening to this has ever had a broken heart before, but there is nothing worse than breaking your own. And the mending process from breaking your own heart, for constantly letting yourself down, your body down, and putting other people first, it's an incredible lesson to be able to learn. And I don't think we need to learn it through pain, as we have stated throughout this episode. And so my advice to you is to just start loving you. Start pouring into you. Start giving you what you need, what your body needs, what your mind needs, even if it comes at the cost of somebody not liking you in that moment, because you are far more important than you could ever possibly imagine. We love to remind you on the InPowered Life podcast, you've come here to have, to be, to do, and to achieve something so big, so bold, so profound, none of which is possible if you are letting yourself down, and that if you're not pouring into you. And so we hope that today's episode creates enough space for you to insert a question. And I want to challenge you all to start loving you. I want you to love you so fiercely that nothing will ever stop you from pouring into you first. Because as you pour into you, you have the capacity to pour into other people. And if you just constantly are giving of yourself, you're taking from yourself. and that's never a long-term solution. We love you so much. We hope that this episode has resonated with you. If there is somebody that you think could benefit from what you've heard today, please share this episode with as many people to help get our message out and into the world. And then I'm going to ask you for a beautiful favor, and that is just to rate and review our episode, or rate and review the podcast in general. When in podcasting, if somebody were to rate, review, and or subscribe, it supports us in reaching more people. It helps change the algorithm for more people that can reach us and grow the message of what it is that we're sharing. And so please take 2 seconds just to smash a 5-star rating if you are so inclined, and leave a few words of what it is that you feel is most impacted through this episode. We love you. We appreciate you. And we see you on the other side. Have an amazing day, everybody. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.